A new Mario Kart game is coming, and that's basically all we know about it. We may not have a name, we may not have a release date, or any idea what the new features might be, but that won't stop me from predicting the roster for what I guess I'll call Mario Kart 9 for now, creative as I am. But I'm not just gonna draw names from a hat, or go for some wildly unrealistic characters. Instead, I wanna approach this as I think Nintendo would, and really try to get into their head when they create the roster for this new game. As much as I would want Fawful to face off against Jimmy T, I don't think that's very likely to happen, unfortunately. But before we can go into the characters, we need to talk about something that is quite important and has a huge influence on what our roster may end up looking like: the size. It has never been outright proven, Nintendo has never commented on it, but when you look at the latest Mario Kart games, which admittedly does mean we have to go back several decades, cause yeah, that's how long it's been since we've had an entirely new game, it seems like there is a correlation between the roster size of the game and how many participants are in a race. Mario Kart Wii, 7 and the base version of 8 all had around double the number of playable characters as it had racers on the track. 26 versus 12 for Mario Kart Wii, 17 versus 8 for Mario Kart 7, and 30 versus 12 for Mario Kart 8. The latter is a factor of 2.5 though, which is the highest ratio in Mario Kart history so far, and every piece of DLC and added content Mario Kart 8 has had since then has only increased it even further. A fully decked out Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with Booster Course Pass has a massive ratio of 4 times the amount of racers, with 48 characters in total. I think expecting a ratio that high is incredibly unrealistic. I suspect it will be closer to the ratio of base Mario Kart 8, which was around 2.5, like I said. But that doesn't mean Mario Kart 9 will once again have a roster the size of around 30. Anyone who has followed the analysis train of the first look at Mario Kart 9 will probably be aware of this, but for those not in the know, it seems likely that this game will up the number of racers on a track from 12 to 24. We see 24 starting spots before the finish line, which is about as big a hint as we're gonna get right now. But I also think it's worth pointing out this course seems to be significantly wider and larger than what we saw in previous games, probably to make space for a doubled number of racers. Again, this isn't confirmed, but I would be shocked if it turns out this is all some misunderstanding or error. It has to be a new mode at the very least. So, point being, we have double the number of racers on a track now, which also has an effect on the roster as such. Like I said, I think the ratio of racers versus roster will be about similar to base Mario Kart 8, which would land us at 60 playable characters, 12 more than the final version of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It sounds like a very high number, but I think Nintendo will be aware of the expectations for this game after Mario Kart 8 Deluxe ended up as this massive title. You can't go back to a roster size of 30 something now. That'll be massively disappointing. And with 24 races on a course, it means you can't even do 2 races with different groups of characters. That will make things feel repetitive very fast if you're constantly up against familiar foes. So yeah, I think the base roster of this game will be around 60 characters large, with some wiggle room here and there based on how they manage costumes this time around. I suspect there'll be a pretty large focus, with many already having been created for Tour, so that could also influence the roster, and I think 60 is a nice average to work with. Alright, that's enough preparation, let's get this party started. First off, the easy part, every character that has already been shown in the initial trailer. Those are Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Bowser, Donkey Kong, Toad, Yoshi, Wario, Waluigi, Rosalina, Koopa Troopa, Baby Mario, Baby Luigi, Baby Peach, Baby Daisy, Pauline, Bowser Jr., King Boo, Toadette, Birdo, Shy Guy, and Lakitu. That's 23 places given away right then and there, and nothing for me to really add. Let's be real, even if these characters weren't shown, with a roster this big, they were always getting in. So let's not waste another word on this bunch and instead move to the first group consisting of actual speculation, being characters that, yeah, they haven't been shown yet, but feel incredibly likely to make the cut, especially with a roster of this size. First of all, the Koopalings. They haven't really made a ton of appearances recently, but their renaissance is not that far in the past that it doesn't overlap with the Switch era, so I would suspect they're kept from Mario Kart 8. In fact, I've even seen some talk that a Koopaling has been spotted in the trailer, although I can't find that myself, nor does anyone seem to know exactly which Koopaling it is. But that doesn't matter anyway, they're all in or all out, they're not gonna add Larry and leave out Iggy. A big factor to keep in mind here as well is that characters that already have models and animations for Mario Kart 8 or even Thor are much more likely to be included rather than completely new characters, simply because it's easier to implement them. I won't pretend to know a grand deal about game development, nor am I saying that it's as easy as porting a character from Mario Kart 8 to 9, but that bringing the Koopalings over from the past game is easier than creating entirely new models and animations for them is obvious. So, with the Koopalings in, that's another 7 spots gone right there, putting us at 30, already past the halfway point. Feels weird, huh? Another character that I feel fits the bill of no way she's getting cut considering what we already know is baby Rosalina. With all other babies already visible in the trailer, seemingly looking identical to how they did in Mario Kart 8, I think the chances of the newest baby in existence not making the cut to be incredibly small. For our next new old racer, I'm gonna nominate Dry Bones. He, or it, is somewhat of a Mario Kart regular, appearing in DS and Wii for example, but he was strangely absent from the base game of Mario Kart 8, not being included until Deluxe was released. This time around, I suspect he'll be back in the main game. Again, with a roster this size, it makes no sense to cut a character who is relevant to the series and already has most models and animations in place. And basically everything I just said also applies to Dry Bowser, who I suspect will return as well, although there is always the possibility they'll make him a costume variant this time around. The President isn't really there, and this isn't the last character in this video to which this applies, but it is a possibility. Personally, I'll think he'll retain the actual spot he received when added in Mario Kart 8's second DLC pack. Next we have 4 characters that weren't added until the booster course pass, i.e. quite late, but who I cannot imagine won't make the cut with a roster this big. We have already seen Pauline and Birdo make the jump from booster course edition to main roster character, so it definitely isn't impossible, and I suspect that Diddy Kong, Kamek, Petey Piranha and Wiggler will follow in their footsteps. The first 2 are locks as far as I'm concerned. They're recognizable, well-known, appear in the Mario movie, and are very clearly in Nintendo's plans. Not to mention that, again, they shouldn't be too difficult to bring over, unless Diddy Kong also needs a redesign to match Donkey Kong. That might trouble things, it's hard to say. Petey and Wiggler are less certain of their place, but I would personally expect them to make the jump as well. They're relevant enough to just keep them and bring them over from 8. In fact, as you can probably tell, I suspect most of the Mario Kart 8 roster will make its way over to 9. It's just an easy way to start with a large group of characters without needing too much work, especially for these lower relevancy characters that won't get redesigns, new voice clips and perhaps not even new animations. But I will admit, there are a few characters where I'm more on the fence, even though I think they'll make the cut when push comes to shove. The first of that group is Metal Mario. This hasn't been a relevant transformation for Mario in forever, but it has become a sort of Mario Kart staple, being a simple texture swap for regular Mario that's a super easy way to pad out the roster. As unpopular as I'm pretty sure Metal Mario is, with a roster that's even bigger, cutting him doesn't make a ton of sense from that perspective. What is definitely a very realistic scenario though is Metal Mario becoming a costume swap. But since we haven't had it confirmed that's gonna be a major thing for this game, I'm gonna keep him as a separate racer for now. Especially since I think that if he becomes a costume going forward, he won't suddenly free up a spot for a new character, seeing as Metal Mario is way easier to implement than a brand new original character. In a similar camp, we also have Peach's variants, and here I figured the best way to tackle it is to reserve one spot for her outfit swaps. Pink Gold Peach, Cat Peach and Peachette, I strongly doubt they're all staying, but they too could all become palette swaps going forward. Personally, I have filled my spot in the roster with Peachette, simply since she technically isn't Peach, which might be a holdup in including her as a costume, but again, no precedent, so it's hard to say. Pink Gold Peach and Cat Peach though, I don't think these will appear as standalone racers in Mario Kart 9. They're not needed, they're not really characters, they're unexciting, and they're not relevant or included in recent games either. I can't completely rule them out as roster padding, but I think they're getting cut as standalone characters and only have a chance of reappearing as costumes. Let's get back to an actual character that I'm really on the fence about, which is Funky Kong. He's new in the Booster Course Pass, which might bode well for him, but unlike Petey Piranha and Wiggler, Funky simply isn't super relevant to the Mario world right now. He also wasn't in a Mario movie, for example. On the other hand though, the focus does appear to be a bit more on Donkey Kong right now, with him getting a redesign and a theme park section and all, so maybe they'll want to put some more focus on the Kongs, in which case Funky is easy to bring over. Out of Mario Kart 8's final roster, he is the actual character from the Mario series I feel least confident about returning, but I do think that with a roster size this big, he'll make it in. Another racer I'm very on the fence about is the 9's. And there's a very simple reason for that: we have no clue whether 9's will return on Switch 2. There hasn't been any indication, we might not get an indication for who knows how long, it's a mystery. But after the Switch definitely downplayed their role, it isn't unrealistic to see them ditched, in which case they'll surely not reappear as racers. But personally, I think 9's will be a thing on Switch 2, even if their role decreases even further. So for now, I'm still keeping the Mii on my character roster, although this is definitely one that might very well end up ditched. And that brings us to those other characters that aren't originally from the Mario world: Villager, Isabelle, Link, and the Inklings. These are probably the biggest mystery right now for me. There is absolutely zero indication of whether they'll return or not. There is no president, but it does have a pretty big impact on the roster, removing 4 spots outright, if not more, because the amount of crossover characters might even be increased. If I had to guess, I would think these 4 are not making the cut for Mario Kart 9. I think that with the place Mario is in right now, Nintendo is gonna want to establish the new standard expanded world of Mario for the Switch 2, and this new era. In a way, you can compare it to what happened with New Super Mario Bros. And how that changed the world of Mario. But I don't think Nintendo will make the same mistakes as back then, and instead present the world of Mario as one filled with creativity, wackiness and fun, as opposed to generic and too clean like that era has often been called. Mario Kart 9 will play a huge role in how millions of people view the world of Mario, and I think that for that reason alone, Nintendo won't want to include characters from other franchises at the start, instead focusing on the characters they want you to know from the Mario universe. I will say though, they're prime DLC material, perhaps with new courses even, and if characters from other Nintendo franchises do return, I am willing to bet my entire life savings that Pikmin will be getting representation. I just don't think they'll be in the base roster. The same also applies to Tanuki Mario. Similar to Cat and Pink Gold Peach, it's an alternate costume or nothing for him. I can't see him getting his own separate spot again like in Mario Kart 8. Alright, enough negativity and who won't make it, let's refocus on who will make the roster with around 20 spots left to be filled. And now that the entire Mario Kart 8 roster has been handled, we can shift our focus to other kart games, with Thor probably being a large influence on 9's character roster. We could already see this pattern with the Booster Course Pass, with plenty of courses and characters being brought over from Thor, and I suspect that if Mario Kart 9's roster is indeed getting even bigger, more characters will find their way to home console. In fact, I would call several Thor characters shoo-ins, even if they have never appeared in a mainline Mario Kart before. Like Moni Mole, for example. Moni has become a bit of a Mario Party regular in recent entries. I see no reason why he couldn't find his way to Mario Kart either, especially with Thor providing all the groundwork necessary. Hammer Bro is in a similar camp, to the point it's hard to believe he has never appeared in Mario Kart before. We're talking about one of the most recognizable Mario enemies of all time, and one who has been playable in the Mario Party series and plenty of sports games. He was once planned for Mario Kart Wii, but ended up cut, but Thor did introduce him to the series, alongside Fire, Boomerang and Ice Bros, who I would fully back to become alternate costumes. Out of every Thor character, Hammer Bro is easily the most likely to be added, bar none, I would say. But I do think there are even more coming from mobile. Nabbit feels likely, especially since Super Mario Bros. Wonder established he is here to stay, even past the new Super Mario Bros. Era that introduced him. At this point, he's a full-fledged 2D Mario playable character that should be more than enough to be included in Mario Kart. Captain Toad also feels likely, especially since he's effectively just a costume swap for Toad from a development perspective. Now, that could obviously mean that he won't be his own separate character, but I find that very unlikely personally. Captain Toad is his own thing, his own character with his own role. He's not just Toad with a hard hat on. Another Thor racer I would back to make the jump is Poochie. He's a cute little dog with plenty of relevance in the Yoshi series, what's not to love? In fact, I was really expecting him to be included in the Booster Course Pass already, especially when it became clear Yoshi's Island was getting added. That didn't happen, but surely he won't miss out again, right? For our next new racer, I'm gonna slot in Dixie Kong. Now, I was relatively skeptical about Funky Kong, even if I did include him, but that's mostly because Funky isn't exactly the most relevant Kong and doesn't really fit specific niche purposes like Dixie Kong does. She's a more relevant Kong, appeared in the movie albeit in a minor role, and not unimportantly, is a female character, something recent Mario games have definitely been aware of including more and more to provide options. It's the reason why Peach and Daisy were in Wonder, and it might also play a role in making Dixie Kong available for Mario Kart 9. If she hadn't been in Tour, I would have been a lot more skeptical, but as it stands, I'll think she'll make the cut. And while we're on the topic of some fresh skepticism, I want to talk about King Bob-omb. If he hadn't been in Tour, I would have never ever considered him a real candidate, but with several assets already in place, plus a random appearance in Mario Golf Super Rush and even a cameo in the Mario movie, it almost seems like Nintendo has something up their sleeve for this guy, despite him barely appearing since Mario 64 20 years ago. Calling him a wildcard now when he's in Tour is maybe not entirely appropriate, but I think that for more casual followers of the Mario series who may not know that, he will feel like exactly the kind of random but fun inclusion that gets folks excited. And hey, with 60 spots, we can reserve one for lesser relevant characters like him. And in a very similar situation is Chargin' Chuck. He too was included in Tour and Super Rush, just like the Good King. So by that logic, you would think that if King Bob-omb is in, so is Chargin' Chuck. And yeah, I'm going by that logic. I think Chargin' Chuck is gonna make it. Well, that is everything that can be brought over from Tour. There are of course other past characters who could return in Mario Kart 9 after years of absence. And I indeed suspect that will happen for one character, Paratroopa. Last seen in Mario Kart Double Dash as Koopa's partner, I will admit this is not the most fun and exciting inclusion, but with a roster size of 60, I do think it is a likely one. Seeing as it's just Koopa with wings, it can't be too hard to include, but at the same time, it is another recognizable face to further pad the numbers a little. As cynical as that may sound, the fact of the matter is that is a clear part of the mindset for Mario Kart. All it takes is a look at the rosters of the past to realize that. But with our roster filled up to 50, I don't think any more past Mario Kart characters will return. Which means that Honey Queen won't come back from 7, Donkey Kong Jr. won't return from Super as well as Tour, and Rob will stay in DS. Simply put, these characters aren't relevant enough to the modern Mario zeitgeist, and unless everyone is here is gonna be the tagline for Mario Kart 9, which would surprise me a great deal, I don't think they have even the slightest of chances. Donkey Kong Jr. basically doesn't exist anymore, having Rob in the game but not Link and Isabelle would be insane, and Honey Queen was always a weird inclusion, but with the Galaxy days now long behind us, bringing her back makes no sense, even if you're keeping the larger roster in mind. But alright, time for the final section of this video, brand new characters that have never been behind the wheel and may not have a driving license. Let's begin with some characters who may have never appeared in a Mario Kart game but have been playable in other Mario spin-offs. After all, these characters seem to have a certain standing at Nintendo that puts them above characters that have never appeared as playable, and thus have what I would consider increased chances. By far the most likely in this group, one I would consider a shoo-in is Goomba. Sure, he has no hands, but that hasn't stopped Mario Party, Baseball and Tennis Aces from making him playable and figuring it out. And especially the latter two require a lot more handwork than Mario Kart, that much is clear. We don't have to spend any time discussing Goomba's iconic status, it speaks for itself, and while they are a common stage hazard, I don't think that will be a major issue, seeing as the same applies to Monimo and previously Mies as well. As far as brand new inclusions go, Goomba makes too much sense not to make the cut. While we're on the topic of characters without hands though, I think including a Chain Chomp and Piranha Plant is a bridge too far. They have had very surprising playable appearances on Switch, Piranha Plant even as high profile as Smash, but unlike Goomba, I just cannot see these two sitting behind the wheel, let alone on top of a bike. So yeah, might be a little contradictory based on my inclusion of Goomba, but these two are not making the cut. Who is also having a surprise spree of playable appearances is Ninji. Playable in Super Rush, playable in Mario Party Jamboree, featured in Mario Wonder, It seems like Nintendo has suddenly seen a sort of potential in this character that had been sidelined for quite a while, and inclusion in Mario Kart 9 would be another very fitting feather in his cap. I'm a little on the fence about this one still, I will admit, but I think he's getting in. And I feel the same way about Spike, another enemy who suddenly became a frequently seen playable character just a bit earlier than Ninja. Mario Party 10 was the first to include him, with playable roles in Mario Sports Superstars, Mario Tennis Aces and Jamboree following afterwards. Being included as a driver in Mario Kart 9 would make a ton of sense, especially since, don't forget, this is the first new Mario Kart since Spike even had this unexpected rise. And that is an important point for our next two characters as well. When Mario Kart 8 first released, these two were barely even characters, but nowadays they feel more than relevant enough to feature in a Mario Kart game, and it honestly kinda surprises me they're not in Thor. I'm talking about Boom Boom and Pom Pom, who have had a slew of appearances on Switch as recently as Jamboree even, but have only very rarely appeared as playable characters. Pom Pom had Super Mario Party and Boom Boom was in Mario Tennis Aces, but that's about it. I think it's very likely that will change come Mario Kart 9. These two feel like very likely inclusions. Next up, we have a character with a bit of a conundrum. Blooper. Personally, I think and hope that the blooper item is getting cut, which would then mean that the possibility of the little squid being playable, like in Mario Party 8, Mario Tennis Aces and Mario Super Sluggers, increases massively, to the point I think it's very likely. But that's only if the item is getting cut. Otherwise, I can't see it happening. I hope the devs realize that this item isn't it, and would probably only suck more with larger courses. But while all these characters have at least appeared as playable in some Mario titles in the past, for my final 4 inclusions, we're looking at characters that have never, ever appeared as playable in a Mario game before. But that doesn't mean I think they're unlikely. In fact, I feel very confident about especially the first of this bunch, which is Cranky Kong. I mean, have you seen the Mario movie? Cranky Kong plays a big role in it, solidifying his role in the Mario franchise in a way he had never had before, and to further cement things, the entire Jungle Kingdom arc of the movie focuses quite a bit on Mario Kart and even features Cranky in a kart. The way I see it, Cranky is extremely likely to be included here, albeit possibly with a redesign similar to Donkey Kong to resemble his movie self more. Next up, a character that is often asked for, often rumored and often included in roster speculations like this one. Professor Egad. I won't pretend like I'm super hyped or eager to see him included, even if I think it would be cool. I mostly just think it's gonna happen. Make no mistake, Luigi's Mansion 3 has elevated the series to new heights popularity and sales-wise, and unlike other spin-offs like Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi, the Luigi's Mansion games at least tie into the main Mario world and franchise. He has never been playable before, barely even acknowledged, but I think that this is his moment. This is the time for Egad to make his playable debut in the Mario game series that most often includes characters from side series like Donkey Kong or Yoshi. And just like Egad, another character who I've often seen included for Mario Kart 9 in speculative rosters is Prince Florian. I have to say though, I don't feel very confident about this one. I have included him in my roster, but out of all 60 names, including the character that's left to come, that's a real wildcard, I feel least confident about this little worm. Don't get me wrong, it could very well happen. Hell, I included him in my roster, of course it can happen. But to me, the only thing really going for him is that he's from a recent mainline Mario game and is someone who you can kinda picture sitting on a bike, unlike Cappy for example. But I don't know. I'm not convinced Nintendo wants to make a bigger deal out of Prince Florian than the role he had in Mario Wonder. We've seen this often before in the RPG titles, one-game partners who then never reappear, and I could fully see Prince Florian following that heritage. But hey, at the end of the day, I still have him on my roster, he's still included. But if Miyamoto leaves a comment saying I am wrong on one character only, I am convinced it's Prince Florian. And not my final pick as such, even if I admit it is a proper wildcard. I predict the final playable character will be a penguin. Very out there, I fully admit that, but think about it. Penguins were made surprisingly important in the Mario movie, even playing a massive role in the first trailer. They're cute and instantly recognizable, even to those unfamiliar with the Mario franchise, unlike Prince Florian and Egad, and very hard to hate or dislike. Penguins are both generic, but also a recognizable Mario face at the same time. Kinda similar to how the Honey Queen was, all the way back in Mario Kart 7. And don't forget that in one of their first appearances, we're facing a penguin in a race. It's a perfect blend of various factors that I very strongly feel will result in a spot behind the wheel. And that completes my roster of 60 characters. To very quickly recap, that means I think the starting roster for Mario Kart 9 will be Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, Bowser, Wario, Waluigi, Yoshi, Rosalina, Koopa Troopa, Baby Mario, Baby Luigi, Baby Peach, Baby Daisy, Pauline, Donkey Kong, Bowser Jr., King Boo, Birdo, Lakitu, Shy Guy, Toadette, Larry, Lemmy, Iggy, Morton, Roy, Wendy, Ludwig, Baby Rosalina, Dry Bones, Dry Bowser, Kamek, Diddy Kong, Petey Piranha, Wiggler, Metal Mario, Peachhead, Funky Kong, me, Monty Mole, Captain Toad, Nabbit, Poochie, King Bob-omb, Chargin' Chuck, Dixie Kong, Paratroopa, Goomba, Hammer Bro, Blooper, Ninja, Spike, Boom Boom, Pom Pom, Cranky Kong, Professor Egad, Prince Florian, and a penguin. But hey, those are just my picks. Who do you suspect will make the cut? And who do you not want to see included? Share it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all my future Mario content coming up. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.